Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant, John Solider. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, everybody, it is my privilege to welcome a new friend, kind of an old friend too, because her husband and I knew each other many years ago in the UK, many moons ago. We caught up recently through a mutual friend in the UK, and he told me all the great things that Trisha's doing. And I said, "Hey, I got to get Trisha on the show." So, without any further ado, let me welcome my friend Trisha Kavanagh. How are you today?
I'm really well, John. Great to be with you.
So, how did you get started in the direct selling business or the home based business, or so many different words for it today, as we were just talking about? But how did you get started?
Myself and John, we met and married in a little herbal tonic company that, really in many ways, I have to say, was such a blessing. That was 31 years ago we met and we married in that little company. Well, we didn't marry, we married afterwards, but we met through that company, yes.
Wow, amazing! I have a few people that met through that company, believe it or not, that got married, and they're still married. There's a couple in Houston that I interviewed that are so that was good. But so 31 years ago, and what did you do before?
Yes.
What was your what did you do prior to that?
Well, I come from a big Irish family, and of course, my father kind of put us all into vocations, and I was kind of a teacher, but I was never designed to be a teacher. That was not my thing. I think, I really was. I suppose community based. I always knew I'd be building something within communities, and just fell in love with the network marketing industry.
And how important has self development been for you?
Well, really hugely, because if I think back on the whole journey, I mean, myself and John, we always were top leaders in some of the top global health and wellness companies, the billion-dollar companies that are still standing today. And I think because we knew that to build those companies, we needed really great leadership skills, team building skills. We always put that at the forefront of our focus. And I have to say, when I look back on that period of time, I mean, there's a lot to say about those decades. But one thing, even though you sometimes wonder what real value all the investment you did with people was, but I think the one thing I can say is that everybody who we invested with personal development have gone on and probably done great things in their lives, in all areas of their lives. So yes, really key.
It is so important. If we never got in this industry, would we have ever heard of Jim Rohn or some of the other, people that were really kind of identified in our industry as self-development, leadership, John Maxwell and others. So I sometimes think that I ask leaders that. I mean, so, it's been very important to you, obviously.
Yeah, very much. Very much. Yes.
And let's talk about a new era of entrepreneurship. I mean, we're at a different time in the world. The economy is hurting everywhere. I'm sure in the UK, like it is here in the US and in Canada and in many other places. People need to make money. How are you getting people to identify this new era of entrepreneurship and joining your business?
I guess I paid a big price to know what I know today, because every single company that we became leaders in, there was enormous amount of learning within that world. And because we chose health and wellness, many of the times where we would sort of walk away and start again, we really, well, I came into this industry for one thing. I came in for people to have free lives, to step into a place of great, step into their calling and really be great and healthy. But in those years and decades, I never felt as if we achieved that with people. And I think that was always, I always thought it was to do with maybe the company, but then I realized, actually, I know that this is an industry that is going to attract many of the masses out there going forward. But I had to dig in to find out what has been missing. I mean, why is not everyone set free? Why is not everyone, able to, despite the amount of personal development they do, able to enjoy a life of freedom and overflow and health? And that was a long journey for me.
Now, in your current business, are you getting the younger people? Are you getting they put all this terminology on this stuff, and I forget the X generation and the Y generation and all these different generations. But let's just call it the 18 to 30-year-olds that are where we were way back, 30 plus years ago, starting families, trying to buy their first home, perhaps getting the kids into good schools, all that sort of thing that those young people are doing. Are you getting those people? And if you are, how are you getting them?
If we don't invest in the next generation and get all those Gen Z, millennial generation into a great positioning and developing them as great leaders going forward in entrepreneurship, we're really missing a beat. So that's been a real passion of mine. I've realized too that a lot of the outdated education systems are not preparing them for where we go forward. So for me, in many ways, having moved into now a whole new sense of what's possible, I love the fact that we can totally transform this next generation and that everybody can be successful. Everybody can win. And I think that's probably why I can confidently, when I look back, when I was a millennial and I started in this industry, I was having to really find my way around it. But now I'm so clear. One, that because of the strategies that we can with the younger generation, because we do need to have world changers. I mean, we are in a new timing, since 2020. I mean, everything changed, and we do need to equip the young people to be world changers, to be able to step up and step out and do something that even in our time when we were in our 20s, John, you and I, and it wasn't the same, but now it's really important. It's very important.
So let me give you a hypothetical. Let's go back about 5 years, pre-COVID, the good old days, right? Which seemed like yesterday. Now we're only going on, I guess, 6 years on that. But let's say there's a mom and a daughter, and you were telling me earlier where you guys are living, and I want to get into that because it sounds like you have a great lifestyle, and I want you to share that certainly. But let's stay on this thought for a second. So a mom and a daughter, they live down the street from you there, and they see you and John going off to have breakfast on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, and they're like, they must be retired, or, they must be independently wealthy. And all of a sudden, after a couple of months of doing that, mom says to the daughter, or the daughter says to mom, the Kavanaghs seem to have a nice lifestyle. And I think they're in, one of those home-based business things. I don't know which one, but why don't we go knock on the door and say, Trish, tell us what you do. Why should they get involved today in business for themselves? And maybe, by the way, 2019, they looked and they said, yeah, not for me, not my kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to sell anything. I don't want to recruit anybody. I don't want to do any of that. Right. But now all of a sudden, because of the economy, people's thinking has changed. Right. So that mom and the daughter, they come down, and let's just say the daughter is well educated. She's 25. Let's give her an age, 25. And mom before COVID was looking at, hey, maybe I'm going to be able to retire in a few years, spend time with the grandkids, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden, all that changed. And they come down and knock on your door today. They come in and you say, hey, sure, I'll give you an hour of my time. What do you tell them about what you do that they could do?
I focus in on this concept called limitless life, because one of the challenges out there is that, and I am pretty radical. I do believe we're living in a time where we really do have to have so many people step out of that very limited life they're in, like never before. So for me, I start off by the whole conversation about, what are you up for? When I was in more the traditional health and wellness companies, I mean, my question would be limited enough. I will say that too, because my experience of results for people was always limited. So I would ask questions, but it was never like that. What are you up for? What would you like to create? What's your vision? And I think we're living in a time where so many people, who have tried business in the past, or they know people who have, will be in a position where they think, it's just not going to work. I haven't got it in me. And they haven't got enough role models around them for success. So for me, it's like, what are you up for? And then it's let's do it. So that let's do it changes everything because, this thing of, well, now we're going to show you what to do is kind of not the thing for today going forward. It's like, let's create that together. And of course, one of the things about that together is like, well, what do you expect me to do? Well, actually position yourself. Just get positioned for that limitless life is what I would encourage you to do. And what I love about that is that we live in a time where, because systems are very simple. I mean, I create I'm become the lady of overflow. So I have this really sense today, there's such an overflow of people within communities who are all, really, they're like ready to be part of, this whole new era. That for me, it's not a question of, well, you've got to go out and do this and we will support you. I go, we as a support team are going to create this global community together. And I think that's where I come from. And then I take them through the simple steps. And what I do is, and I think this is really key with the new era of where we go, is we have them experience what it's like first. How does that overflow work? So that they start to really, experience that. And then out of that, they get that kind of like sense of, this is amazing. I really, really want to be part of this. And I think that only comes from knowing what you are, doing is going to enable, that overflow. I mean, I know there's a lot of things that I could declare overflow about, but that you couldn't create it because it's a limited, company or product for a limited marketplace. But I think it's different when we have what we have right now. And that's really inspiring for me because I think, what we need to break into is so many people out there have lost so much. They've lost so much. They've lost their faith in what they can do. They've tried different companies. They've gone into the crypto world or whatever they've gone into, and it's just been either loss of possibility, loss of dreams, loss of money, loss of friends. It's like people kind of are feeling a bit like that. And I think it's just so lovely to give people such a hope that it's not down to them. And I think that's why I'm pretty passionate about the industry going forward, because I think that, I believe we've only just got started. I think that a lot of the last decades in this industry has just been a preparation for the times we're going into. And I do believe that every single person who has a desire for whatever limitless life means to them, which could be just that mother and daughter, being together and having a life together. It doesn't matter, doesn't mean a lot. And I think for goodness sake, a lot of people would just like a simple life that works, where they have restoration of family life, marriages, just being in community, being able to serve communities and have great health. And I discovered that for the first time, that when I was looking back on my last, say, 3 decades of striving and, trying to make people healthy. I remember my son said, who's actually one of the fruits of our kind of, I would say, our entrepreneurship. He's become an incredibly successful content creator, but he'd come in and he'd say, why don't you make people wealthy instead of healthy? I mean, as well as, and I remember thinking at the time, it was really interesting because a couple of years ago, I got what he was talking about, and I really believe that we're living in a time that through this industry, we can create not only overflow, but a whole culture of giving and rest. And I don't mean rest when you make it all happen, in the year and 2 years when you've, done the do. I mean, rest immediately, just get into that place of rest, community, overflow, and that level of feeling successful and winning from the start. Yeah. And I think that just makes the warm up in the last decades to an incredible time ahead, which I would love the next generation to really, be able to grab the baton for and really, take on to a whole new level. So yeah, exciting times.
You have a lot of moms and daughters in your business, or fathers and sons, or couples, a lot of family units working together?
Yeah, I love it. All the demographics coming together. Grandparents, parents, and children all coming together and all as families building.
Love it. So let's talk a little bit now. You mentioned your son is a content creator, but you're not a huge social media advocate, I believe. You use it a little bit, but talk about that a little bit. What are you and what aren't you doing with social media?
I'm a mobilizer. I mean, I'm a visionary strategist and a mobilizer, but I do have great social media marketers in my team, and I love their skill set. And I love to take full advantage of what they are great at and position them to get the very, very, very best out there with what they do. So I think that that's the key. It's to find the gift zones of people and just let them be positioned to be the very, very best in that. So yeah, I just love it. I love the fact that we're in those times where you can have such different types of giftings within a project. And particularly that one, because, I think there is no end of what's possible through social media today, with what's possible to do. And I think it does, I love the fact that, every single, and, there's just millions of young people. And this really does inspire me because I know in the traditional network marketing experience, so many women who would have adored just to be with their kids and be at home literally had to go back to work because what they were doing in the time it was in didn't work. But what I love today with social media is that everybody can just be with their home in their family environment, homeschooling or whatever it is, and actually really do well, in the right project or projects with social media skills, just simply.
Great answer. And yeah, because you see so many people, some people love social media, some people don't know how to use it, but there's a place at the table for the people who do, and there's still a place at the table for the people who don't. So that's what I love about
Yes.
our industry is, hey, it's a big table.
Yes, yes, it sure is. Yeah, it sure is. It's getting
So,
bigger.
exactly. So what are some of your future goals?
Well, I've just warmed up, I believe. I think it's great to kind of get that perspective that a lot of the wisdom that you build up over the years, not necessarily through the successes, but actually through what didn't work or what you become, more and more passionate about. Because sometimes you wonder, why are you positioned in this industry? And you think, what is it that has you stay firmly in this industry? I believe it's for this time. And I believe that really I have a huge sense that in our watch, through this industry, so much can change out there in the world. And it's so exciting to know that we can be such enablers for so much transformation in culture. And that really, that has me feeling like we are only warming up. And that, I suppose, is why I call it the new era, because, it has to come out of a place of rest and overflow and all those things.
Now, let's come back to the limitless life because that's a great concept. And I'm going to tell you, you should definitely start a podcast with that title. It's a great title. You'd be amazed how this one evolved. I'll tell you that story one of these days. But yeah, it's a great talking point. If you had to describe a limitless life that you now live on a daily basis, including, by the way, your trips down to the water from your home, what three things would you say are indicative of that limitless life that you have because you've been successful in this industry?
Well, I think it's less to do with anything financially that you have. It's more a positioning. I think it's like a realm you step into. And I will describe it as, having lived a life for decades of coming from lack, really, I suppose, and striving to try and change that. I think the first word I would use is rest. And I think, we're not in any way, sitting on our laurels and resting in terms of resting because we're, as I said, just warming up. But there's a positioning where people will be more attracted to, like I described to you, our fabulous fun breakfast on the beach every day. The three of us, John, myself, and my son, where we just, we're just laughing all the time. And I think that life of really just simply enjoying every moment and being in that place of peace where you can really just tune in, and tune into what is needed, so you're not living a life where you're standing in a place of wisdom, but actually it's not wisdom from the past. It's more like a daily where you're able to, out of that place of rest, really inspire others too. That's all I ever wanted, was to see a lot of people healthy, getting healthier as the decades go by, and actually just being in that place of loving being around their families and, just pouring out their, as I say, their love and their investment, which a lot of people would love to do if they had unlimited funds and unlimited freedom into the community too. So yeah.
Great. Well, I love the limitless life. So let's go back a little bit. So 31 years you've been in the home-based business market, right?
Yes.
And now we're kind of in this new era. What would you change? Okay, with everything that you've learned, right? 30 years is a long time to you've learned a lot of lessons, good and bad. Let's start out with what were the things that people should eliminate doing to be successful, and then we'll come back to what they should do to be successful.
Well, I think it's a personal thing for me. I think for me, I found that I was very, very, very much focused on building with product companies. So I was very much focused. And for me, it was always a case where I saw that is our area. And I'm so glad, because for me, I think that myself and John will say that through the health and wellness world, we have probably had more transformation of education about health across the world for whatever else than anything else. But I did take a step into the decentralized space, and I realized maybe it was like there's a way that this decentralized financial space can enable more people to be able to enjoy their product companies. And I was very delighted to find 2 years ago that that's what could happen, that you could actually have a financial enablement to be able to play out fully what you want to do in whatever project you're doing. And for me, that was the game changer. That was the game changer. And that's what has me really, I suppose, inspired today going forward, that you can actually have it all. You can have all of it work together if you've got the right projects that you're working with.
What would you say the number one thing people getting into this space need to learn?
I think they need to be coachable. I think they need to be willing to let go of any preconceived idea from either their personal past experience or what they've seen in there. So they've got to let all of that go. What I always say to everyone I speak to is let everything, all of your baggage, everything that you've preconceived, let that go and step on a journey. And I think it's quite I think the word childlike is a good word, because I think a lot of the time we carry our baggage that has been, on one level, something that we think has been not successful. Actually, if you let all of that baggage go and step in with that kind of, I suppose, word childlike expectation that you can, just follow steps to be successful, you find that all of the great muscle that you built in everything you've done in the past actually translates into something of great fruitfulness and productivity. So I think that's my first one, is let go of your past, shake it all off, and be willing to start again. And you really have to have great vision too. I think that's the key. You really have to, stand on radical vision, because, and really, really, I think it also comes out of a sense that, the world needs to change, and, that you're on this earth for a reason. And this is the time. The time of being on this planet is now. And it's now that everything you've learned is going to come into a great place of, I say, fruitfulness and, generational legacy leaving is what I think is a key one for all of us at this stage. Is what are you going to leave? What is your, your legacy, and what are you leaving for the next generation?
So, Trish, as we wind up here, what would be your advice? We've got listeners all over the world at all different levels, by the way. We've got, people who are number one in their respective companies that have been on the show and, make crazy money. But we've got a lot more people that want to get where they're at. What would be your advice to them in terms of and you used the right word there, or the word that they need, vision. How do they get that vision like you have so clearly in what you do on a daily basis with your daily method of operation to build?
I will just say that I spend a lot of time in the Word of God, and it's just simply because I don't think you're going to get vision other than that. I think, for me, I'm very, very clear about that for me today, that everything that has been given has been such a gift. Every journey today has been such a gift. And really, that's the one thing that has me be passionate going forward. It's that sense of, that God is with me, and everything that He's planned has been for a purpose. Everything that we've experienced has been for a purpose, and that He has planned to see it all come pass. And it's that I absolutely know. Other than that, I think, I'd have probably given up long ago. If it was down to just in my own sense of, myself, it would have been gone. But I think that's the key.
Great answer. When much is given, much is expected, right? Old Testament
Yes.
prophecy. Another Irish boy was told that by his father growing up, named John Kennedy, by the way. That was the number one thing that John Kennedy's dad always told the boys. Much is given, much is expected. Go do something with it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it can come suddenly. I think for a lot of us, we think, well, we've got to where we're at, and all of a sudden, and we do serve a God of the suddenlies. It's like all of a sudden, just out of the blue, least expected, everything just changes. And I think that's what I think is really key, that people are in expectation of that. A lot of people have been waiting. They've been waiting for a moment, or they've been, as I say, disappointed. But I think this is a time of such restoration and such a sense of real, as I say, it was all worth it. It was also worth it. Time going forward.
Well, Trish, this has been an honor and a lot of fun. And once again, thank you so much for taking your time. I know how busy you've been, because we've been trying to do this for 2 months, I think. So we finally got together. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Soloder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.